Well, hi! You are...
Back once again with the Renegade Master.
And welcome back to No Straight Answers, the podcast where I speak to LGBT plus people and get involved with our community, see if there's anything on their mind. Today's guest is the absolutely incredible, mega superstar drag queen Rhiebelle. Ex-army, mental health advocate, just incredible human being. This one's really, really special to me. We do some talk about labels and mental health and self-worth. And does Yorkie have the worst ever advertising campaign? Possibly. No Straight Answers is recorded live over on twitch.tv/JenegadeMaster. So if you ever want to ask the guests questions or anything like that, just feel free to pop along to there when they're being recorded. And the video versions are going up on youtube.com/JenegadeMaster. This one's really, really special to me. I cannot tell you how much I learned from Rhiebelle. I think she's an amazing human being, and I hope you enjoy this one as much as I did. I am Jen, and I am a cis queer woman, and my pronouns are she, her. And with me today is the incredibly glamorous, I'm very sad for future audio listeners that won't see this, but it's the incredibly glamorous Rhiebelle.
Oh, hi.
Hi.
I'm super hyped to be here. I am a drag queen. I am she, her when I'm in drag, he, him out of drag, cis man when I'm not in drag.
Amazing. So do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself, what you do?
Yeah, of course. So I'm 10 years ex-army. I was in the army for a decade. I kind of like fell into it at quite a young age and was kind of like, okay, so this is my life now. This is how I'm going to shape all of my ideals in life. After 10 long years, I fell out of the army, fell into therapy. And well, I mean, in a way, yeah, I got a knee injury. And then off the back of a fall, and then decided that was probably the time that I hung up the boots, as it were. Went into therapy, and I'd learned so much that was going on internally through therapy, and started to undo a lot of conditioning. Back then, if you had told me then I was going to be a drag queen in 2020, 2021, I would be like, excuse me? What do those words mean? And yeah, I've just been on a huge journey over the last 4 years since leaving. And now I dedicate my time and my energy to helping other people on their mental journeys. I host streams that are all about mental health, growth, mindfulness. And that's kind of become my driving factor in life.
Okay, so how did you fall into drag then? How did that happen?
So I was in a murder mystery company.
Okay.
And that murder mystery company sent me to a little town in North Wales called Llandudno.
Wales!
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 So I'm up in Llandudno, staying in this hotel. And I came back from the acting job. And in this hotel that I'm staying in, this drag queen is performing. And I'm standing in the doorway like, what is going on in here? And so the queen clocked me from the door and called the whole group and come in lovelies, come and join the party. So I'm sitting there at the front with a few drinks, and this queen takes a bit of a liking to me, and she gets me on stage with her, and I'm like, in one hand I'm like, what's going on? I am so far out my comfort zone here. On the other hand, I'm like, let's just embrace this. Let's just embrace whatever happens. Just go for it. Throw myself into this and see what happens. So that was my first real introduction to drag. And then maybe a year later or so, a friend of mine introduced me to RuPaul's Drag Race. And that was kind of the point that I started to see drag artists from the other perspective of okay, so these are all the queens on Drag Race, at least, are men, and they've all got these intricate backstories of people who the journeys they've been on. I started to recognize the art, how much effort goes into the face painting, and how much they allowed themselves to become a version of them that they wouldn't usually when they weren't in drag. And then I started giving it some thought, and I was like, I'm quite feminine, I suppose, by society standards. What if that's something I could do? What if I could start looking into exploring my femininity? But I was like, at the same time, I really want to make a stance around my drag, which is why I still have my beard. I blur the lines around gender, encourage people to question what they've been taught to believe around what what your gender says you should or shouldn't wear, or what your gender says you should or shouldn't do.
Mhm.
And I'm now all about my drag is now all about encouraging people to be their truest and best selves, whatever that means to them, as long as it's safe to do so in their immediate environment.
I love that so much. It's the kind of like attitude I'm completely in love with. So what series of Drag Race did you come into then?
So I was introduced at series, I want to say 9. I
Oh,
think it was
okay.
9.
All right.
So it's quite late on. But then after I watched all of series 9, I then went all the way back to series 1
Mhm.
and watched everything from start to finish. And do you know what? I'm going to say it. There might be international audiences out there that are going to disagree with this. But
Okay.
RuPaul's Drag Race UK,
Yeah.
best 2 seasons of Drag Race, hands down.
100%.
Hands
100%,
down.
mate. 100. I think for me, Drag Race UK, what's really been showcased is the sort of UK level of drag, where I think for the longest time, they're getting better at correcting it a little bit. But Drag Race US, its biggest problem has always been there's been a certain type of queen that has normally won, and it's normally been like a sort of glamorous supermodel and not necessarily a comedy queen, but sometimes a comedy queen. And then I think UK Drag Race, there's just been this incredible like diversity of talent, it seems like.
Yes, exactly. I feel like there's pros and cons to Drag Race in the same way there's pros and cons to everything. I feel like one of the biggest cons is something that I really want to nip in the bud.
Go for it. Hit
Is
me.
the idea that drag is just lip syncs, shadiness, and just like being, if you'll excuse my French, being a bitch.
Okay.
Like there's so much more to it now. Obviously, that is an element of entertainment when it comes to drag. But the drag umbrella as a whole. So, for instance, okay, let's take it on a slightly different path.
Let's go.
I've had so many people approach me and ask me about drag and said, like, so you're a drag queen, so like, and what about like men? Sorry, women. Well, how do they do drag? And it's like, well, anywhere they want to do drag. If someone who was assigned female at birth wants to be a drag queen, they can absolutely be a drag queen. If you want to be a drag king, absolutely be a drag king. You've got drag creatures, you've got drag characters. There's so much diversity underneath the drag umbrella. I think RuPaul's Drag Race has done this incredible thing of bringing drag into the mainstream and making people aware of it as an art form, as a form of entertainment. And I think it's important to also highlight that it's a foot in the door of the drag mansion. There are many more steps to take yet. Come in. We're very welcoming in here.
I can't say I've heard of a drag creature. How does that work? What's that?
So drag creatures, drag is essentially, there's no real definition of drag. Drag is very individual, and how you perceive drag. So drag creatures, well, what I first off recommend is checking out one of my stream teams, the Stream Queens.
Stream Queens, okay, like that.
Stream Queens, yes. So we're an all drag troupe of drag queens, kings, creatures, and characters.
Oh,
and drag creatures will tend to be, well, I don't even want to go into what they tend to be because everyone's going to be a little bit different, aren't they?
Yeah.
But like we're talking like like monstrous drag. We're talking. Have you heard of the Boulet brothers Dragula?
I haven't. No.
So
I feel like this is going to be an amazing experience for me because I guess really my exposure to drag has been Drag Race, and also there's a couple of local drag clubs in Cardiff. There was an incredible one before obviously COVID hit it called Minsky's, and it was like my favorite place in the world because I used to go there and the queens were just so talented. And I think Jolene Dover has been there. Tina Sparkle was kind of like their main drag queen that they had, and I'm realizing talking to you that there's this whole breadth of stuff I haven't even seen yet,
And that's exciting. Like it's definitely not a bad thing. So Dragula is on Amazon Prime. It's run by the Boulet brothers, and it's basically the alternative side of drag. It's much more, I would say, diverse in the artists that they have on the series than RuPaul's Drag Race is.
Great.
Which again isn't necessarily like a better or worse thing. It's just a more diverse thing, which is what it is. And there are, as I say, more alternative in regard to that was probably the best way to introduce into drag creatures, I think.
Okay.
I'd say checking out that series.
Because I think it's interesting to touch on Drag Race in the sense that, like, as you say, to a degree, it's brought a certain type of drag to a mainstream that it wasn't there before at all. He's definitely done that for it. But I think as it's gone on, because it's become such a stay point of drag culture, it is almost on them now to be better at being a little bit more diverse. And, like they've had a trans man now on the show, which is like the first time they've ever done it, because he was always like, no, I can't have trans men. It has to be cis men doing drag and all this kind of stuff. So it's almost like I think he's now realizing he has to be better as well.
I'm here for the growth. So RuPaul was interviewed, I think it was last year, and I'm not going to get this word for word, so I'm paraphrasing here. But RuPaul basically said, my idea of drag is very different to the kids' idea of drag, and clearly it's my responsibility to adapt and grow in that regard. And that is since then he's obviously had Got Mick on the show, who is a trans man. The first trans man to be on Drag Race, which is incredible. I'm here for it. I think it's important. It's very easy, I think, to get caught up in the idea of someone not being at their most. I don't really like the phrase. I feel like the phrase has kind of been used against the movement, but someone who isn't their most woke selves.
Okay.
Neither have I.
It's fine.
Yes. And it's important not to just immediately turn to that person and be like, well, okay, you don't deserve that. You don't deserve the airtime. You don't deserve this. It's important to give people the kickoff, I suppose, like the platform to grow from, so they can start to adapt their views and start to develop their views as more information is brought to light to them.
Yes.
If the information is brought to light and they then decide to refute that information and decide like, okay, it's not for me, then we can start being like, okay, well, come on now.
Yeah.
There's going to be consequences to your choices here, because you're cutting off an entire demographic of humans, and that's just not a very nice thing to do.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it's important to celebrate the growth in that regard. With RuPaul, I do think that there are more areas that you could still grow in.
Yes,
but,
I agree.
But, as I say, baby steps.
He
Steps
is trying.
into the mansion of growth.
I do feel like compared to the kind of things that he said, say, 4 years ago, to the stuff that he says now, he does seem like he's making an attempt to learn a little bit more. It's
definitely
fascinating what you say about giving people space to grow, because one of the previous podcast guests was Kate, and she said that there's this whole point about like if you immediately jump down somebody's throat for, say, using a wrong pronoun or something like that, you're getting people to shut down rather than learn about something. So it might be better to have a conversation with that person and say, right, well, this is why this is my pronoun, this is why we do this, that, and the other, and giving people that opportunity to learn something rather than just making them sort of shut her off and not learn,
Yeah, absolutely. On the flip side of that, I'm gonna play devil's advocate on that point.
Go for it.
I can also understand why people do come across as more assertive, more potentially aggressive when they're asked for like the 50th time that day. Are you a boy or a girl? What's in your pants? Do you have a penis or a vagina? Which, by the way, I'm going to make a point here. Penis and vagina are not dirty words. They are scientifically accurate words for our parts of our body. And I think it's important that we bring those words back into conversation again.
Were people not saying those words?
And uplifting kind of like, I don't know. I mean, I think there's a lot of people who think that they hear those words and they kind of like wince, or like they think you've just sworn at them. And it's like, you know that everyone's got, most people have either one or the other. Obviously, there are discrepancies, there are intersex people, that sort of thing. But literally, it's a part of us that we're all so afraid to talk about. And I think that's led us into the area that we're in now, like having these like gendered clothing and saying like boys don't cry, girls shouldn't get angry, all this sort of toxic, damaging rubbish.
My little princess and my strong boy, all of that nonsense.
Oh, goodness.
It makes me so angry. So I've got two nephews, right? And there was a point where I was going to buy them a present for Christmas, and it came in the colours of pink and it came in the colours of like green or something. And I hate gendered stuff. Like, it drives me insane that you have to have a specific colour for a specific gender.
Yeah.
And I threatened to buy the thing that was pink, and my entire family was just like, "You can't give boys a pink teddy. What might happen?" I was like, "Nothing."
Can you imagine?
Because at the time they were like 2. I was like, they're probably not even going to notice it's there. I'll be honest with you.
It's ridiculous. I despair at gender roles and gender norms. The idea that, and we talk about this quite a lot on my channel, the idea that if you are born with a penis, you have to fit a certain list of criteria, or if you're born with a vagina, you have to fit this other list of criteria. And it's like, can't we just let people be?
Yeah.
If we have everyone in exactly the same kind of like cookie cutter shape, there are roughly 7.9 billion people on the planet, give or take. Let's round it up to 8 billion. That means you're going to have roughly 4 billion clones of what society deems as a man and 4 billion clones of what society deems as a woman. And that's really boring sounding.
Yeah.
Like, no, thank you.
So
let's encourage individuality.
Dr. Donna has just mentioned something that I was actually going to mention because it was doing my head in, which is about gendered Kinder eggs. So, because the quote-unquote boy's egg normally has the cooler toy in it that I would prefer to get. I mean, I'm only 38. So I've got to have a decent toy. So it was
Absolutely.
like, sometimes if I'm in there, I'm just like, I'm going to have a boy's egg. You don't tell me what to do.
I'm gonna also let Yorkie bars. Do you remember Yorkie bars?
Oh my God. Nothing makes me angrier than the Yorkie bloody advertising campaign.
Back in, so like for those of you too young to remember this, back in like 2000, and saying that makes me very sad. Anyway, back in like 2000 or so, Yorkie had this advertising campaign, and they printed on every single one of their chocolate bars, "It's not for girls."
Mm-hmm.
What? So they were basically, who thought that was a good advertisement campaign? I don't know. Let's close off literally half of our demographic here. Let's just shut down half of our advertisement campaign from 4 billion people. Penis owners, if you want chocolate, do you want chocolate that's going to make you feel more manly? Do you want chocolate that's going to put hair on your chest? Have a Yorkie, but get out of here.
The wild thing about that is because I was working in an office that had a vending machine that had them in while that bloody advertising campaign was going on. And I remember I used to buy them out of spite, which probably was exactly what they wanted. So I used to buy them out of spite and go, you don't tell me, I'm going to eat your bloody chocolate. So
no
realistically,
tells Jenegade what to do.
Yeah, I think who got screwed there, it was probably me. Okay, so I want to have a chat then about, in terms of this pandemic. So I presume it's probably affected you quite seriously. Like, I imagine you were performing and all sorts of stuff. And did that all just kind of shut down? And how did you cope with that?
Actually, no. I actually started drag as a result of the pandemic.
No way.
Yeah.
Okay.
So prior to the pandemic, as I say, I was in the army, and then I left the army, fell into IT for a year, just like basically doing like second line IT support in like the center of London, a finance company. And like, I genuinely thought going into IT, I would be surrounding myself with a load of geeks. Wrong.
Really?
Like, it was the type of men who like are in suits all the time and want to talk football and women.
Oh.
And anything outside of that was just like they looked you up and down like, are you lost?
Oh,
and so I'm trying to slot into this environment, and it just did not work. So I was like, okay, right. I'd stayed for 11 months. Somehow my sanity held out for 11 months. And I was like, right, it's time for me to move on. Bye. And then I found myself in a magic demonstration job, basically demonstrating magic kits and then selling them in a major toy store in London. And following that, I then landed this job with a headphone brand, and it was basically working in stores, speaking to customers, upselling these headphones. And then they promoted me from the store role to a regional marketing manager role, which was incredible. I was traveling around the entirety of the South and Wales, coming into Cardiff as well, basically training store staff on this brand of headphones, And it was just such a good job. And it literally lasted 6 months. 6 months I was in this job, and then COVID comes waltzing in, twirling its cane.
Yeah.
Like, yep, here's COVID. You like that job? Do you like that job? Nah, you can say goodbye to that job. So that all fell apart. And literally it was like, okay, what do I do now? What do I do now? And when COVID first hit, it was this idea of, we'll have you back in a few months. So I was like, okay, I'm going to spend these next few months doing something that I've wanted to do for a while, which was drag. So I started looking into hair, makeup, outfits, and I took to TikTok. TikTok was the area that I first started practicing drag. TikTok didn't last long, unfortunately. I tried to come back to it. Recently, but I found
I thought you'd get famous off TikTok. Isn't that what the kids do?
I had one video do really well. I had one video. I think it got to like 250,000 views or something like that.
Wow.
And then after that, it was like the bug had bitten me, and I was like, why am I not words? Why are none of my other videos good enough? Why do you play me like this, app? You're denying me my audience.
Oh no.
And a friend of mine was like pestering me to go on Twitch for the longest time, like well over a year. He kept saying like, you do really well on Twitch, you do really well on Twitch. And I was like, I don't know if I could do it. I don't know if I could talk for ages, just like a chat box. Is it really me? And then it was the end of June last year that I was like, okay, the drag thing I'm really enjoying. My job doesn't look like it's going to come back anytime soon. So let's look at this Twitch thing. Let's start up a Twitch account, start streaming. So that's what I started doing. End of June was the first time I went live in drag on Twitch playing Rocket League. And
of course, that's the entry word. That's the entry point.
Yeah. Doesn't everyone start with Twitch joining Rocket League? And I had the best time. And since then, I've started just being surrounded by all of these magnificent people from the LGBTQIA plus community predominantly. And it's just become this amazing network of support, encouragement, love, just all of the best things in life have come from this platform, or not necessarily the platform, but definitely the people on the platform.
Yeah.
And I've been so thankful. So ultimately, to come back to your initial question, no, I wasn't performing much before the pandemic, because I was in
you were in the drag gateway job that turns out to be IT.
Exactly. Yes. IT. If you're in IT, if you're listening on IT, drag's coming your way,
Just
my friend.
Just pop a bit of makeup on. See what happens. Give it a bash.
Embrace it. I encourage it. But honestly, drag has been so good for me. Since creating Rhiebelle is essentially all of the conscious parts of me that I strive to be on a daily basis.
Yeah.
And the more that I am Rhiebelle, and the more that I discover Rhiebelle and develop Rhiebelle, the more Rhiebelle starts to like cross over into my boy self.
Yeah.
And it's just so great. It's been so good for me for growth, learning, understanding, and developing myself. And I'm so thankful I did it.
That's incredible. Because it's like, from my perspective, I was doing stand-up for like about a year and a half before COVID hit. And it was the first time in my life I'd had a similar experience, in that I was beginning to feel a little bit more confident in who I was. I was kind of finding out who I was. And through this on-stage persona, it was kind of sinking back into who me as a person was. And then the second COVID hit, it all just collapsed. And I lost that community, and everyone sort of dissipated and all that kind of stuff. To then find myself on Twitch, where somehow you attract all these like-minded people. I don't know how it happens. It's like magic. And then it was just, I became more and more comfortable in the person I was off stream as well as on stream, in the same sort of way. Like, Twitch gives me what stand-up used to give me, in that I can talk to people and build a connection and have that kind of energy change, but without all the late nights walking down Cardiff High Street.
Yeah, it's like you still get the human interaction. You still haven't got to leave the house. This is perfect.
I think that's the bit that was missing for me, because I tried YouTube, and I still do a bit of YouTube, and I like it, but you don't get that same kind of connection with people. And like, there are friends I've made over the last 10 months that will be friends for life. You know, there are people that I just adore and would die for. And I didn't know these people in the slightest. And, you know, for a while they were just names in a chat. And now they're people I speak to every day and I play video games with and we have Discord video calls with. You know, it's incredible how that's all kind of happened.
Yeah, I love it. I think it's been so good for a lot of people to have discovered platforms similar to Twitch and Twitch itself.
Yeah.
In lockdown as a way of connecting to other humans in a time that we've suddenly had human interaction whipped out from under our feet.
Yeah. And
for a lot of us, like it was our livelihood. Like, as I say, like my job was going and just like introducing myself to a new person in a store and being like, hi, this is my name. This is what I do. I'd really love to train your staff. Also, I like your tie. You know, just building that rapport and building that connection with humans. And suddenly I couldn't do it anymore.
Yeah.
And that was where I got all my energy from.
Actual humans.
Yeah, I miss those.
Oh, yeah. What are they? I don't remember. Yeah, I feel like, I don't know, it kind of like, from a sort of LGBT plus perspective as well. So I'd been struggling. I came out quite late in life as being not straight. Like, I still haven't technically nailed the label down. It's probably going to wind up being bisexual. We don't know. But I also think it's fine to not have a label as such, you know?
Oh, for sure.
But like, I really, really struggled with it. I must have struggled with it for about, I think, 3 years before this whole thing happened. And it's being on Twitch and being open with people and literally talking to people about your struggles. And there's something about being on stream that makes you super, super honest.
Yeah.
And everyone has been so supportive of like me as a person. It's gone, do you know what? It's actually okay. Just be whoever you are. It's not a problem.
I love that.
I think in terms of if you are an LGBT plus person, to a degree, it brings you back into contact with people that maybe you weren't going to find in the real world because, you know, we didn't know how to find each other.
100%. I think the LGBTQIA plus tag on Twitch really helps.
Yes, 100%.
I think that's searched quite frequently on Twitch. I've had a lot of people join my community and be like, I found you on the LGBTQIA plus tag. And it's given people a thing to search for to find like-minded humans that they could find solace in a time that, as I say, we can't connect with humans, which is beautiful. A bit of a rant off the back of that. I'm really disappointed that Twitch hasn't implemented the trans tag yet, especially with how much traction it's had and how many votes it's had. And the reason for it was we don't want to enable bullying on the platform. Now, Twitch directors, whatever your official term is, if you want to come and listen to one of my streams,
don't get me cancelled, Rhi.
We love you, Twitch directors.
We love you, Twitch directors. But
if you want to, but it's a big but. If you want to come and listen to, we like big butts normally, but not here. If you want to come and listen to one of my streams on a Sunday, we have mental health chats on Sundays where I do just chatting. Or my mods, particularly, shout out to my mods, have to do so much work on a Sunday stream to take out people who come into my streams purely to say just bullying stuff, trolling stuff, homophobic, transphobic, you name it, we get it. And it's like the bullying and the belittling and the trolling already exists.
yes.
Implementing a trans tag is not going to make that bullying either go up or down. It's still just going to exist as it does. But what it does do is it gives trans people or people who think that they might be trans a easy place to search for to find someone to talk that through with.
100%.
Like, it's so frustrating from a lot of people's perspectives, to be honest, that Twitch still haven't implemented that.
Because that was actually going to be my next question, because I find with the LGBT plus tag is that there have been so many people that come in to say, you know, I'm in that community, hi. There are plenty of people that sort of come in and sort of try and gauge the waters as to whether it's a safe place for them to be. And you can tell by the kinds of questions they're asking whether or not it's going to be a safe place for them to be. And I'm immediately on it to be like, look, you are very welcome here. I'm in that community. It's not a problem. And then you've got the sort of third subsection of subhuman scum that come in and basically target that tag, and they come in with their bullshit. Like, I was going to ask you that kind of, like, do you get a lot of that targeting shit from people?
Oh, loads. Loads. So my gaming streams tend to be quieter for whatever reason. It's almost always when I'm doing a just chatting stream that I'm targeted.
Isn't that
Thankfully,
weird?
it is weird, right? I think that they must just peruse just chatting streams. And I honestly couldn't tell you why. Regardless, thankfully for me, it's very much water off a duck's back.
Yeah.
Like, I was raised Catholic. I have been in the army.
I've worked in IT.
Right. There have been so many parts of my life in which I have been bullied, belittled, targeted, torn down. And I've done so much work in the last 4 years around my self-worth and around my self-esteem to build up essentially an armor. And if someone comes in and tries to abuse me, I'll generally make a show out of them and make them an education piece
for
the stream. And I've never once had a troll come into my stream and left a lasting impression on me, thankfully. But the issue is that there will be people who aren't that resilient through no fault of their own, and that's not me saying like if you're not resilient you shouldn't be on Twitch. Absolutely not. What I am the point that I want to make there is people don't think, and it kind of comes off the back of the clip that you played of me just before I came on the stream here. People don't think about their words and their actions with other people in mind. People are so self-centered in thinking like, okay, well, this is my experience of life. This is what I've learned. And if you don't meet these criteria, my criteria, obviously I'm in the right place to abuse you. And it's like, are you for real?
Yeah.
What makes you more important than anyone else? And what makes your experiences more valid than someone else's experiences?
I look at it a little bit like Hecklers at a comedy show, because obviously that was my experience of it. And whenever you're doing stand-up, you've normally got a very specific amount of time to do. So if you're there to do 10 minutes, you get 10 minutes and you get off. You don't go over because that's rude to all the other comics. So when you've got some knobhead basically trying to heckle you, it's like, all right, I'm going to spend 5 of my 10 minutes bringing you down because it'll be funny, but also, you're completely ruining my time because there are jokes I wanted to test out tonight and I can't now because now I'm dealing with you. It's just rude. Yeah.
And why is his time more important than your time? Yeah. Like, that's not on.
I'm booked here, mate. You've just paid to come in. It's outrageous. But I guess that's kind of what they're doing there. They're coming into streams and they're kind of heckling of a sort and trying to get a reaction from you. So, like, I think the most satisfying one ever for me, I think, was somebody came in, it got auto-modded, so nobody saw it apart from me and the mods, and the mods immediately both banned and deleted it. So it was like, oh, there we are. No one will see it, mate. Nobody.
It's got to be said, the auto-mods are pretty great. I'm a big fan of the auto-mod. It does catch a lot of potentially
It's a bit overzealous sometimes, but it does catch a lot of the bad shit as well.
Sometimes you're having this like really productive conversation and then someone will try and like say in the chat, like, I just want to say it's like, this is the first time I'm saying it ever that I think I might be gay. And then Automod's like, hold on. You stay there.
Are you sure?
The mods are like, let it through.
I haven't got it anymore. Oh, have I? I might still have it. I don't know. I used to have some merch that said not straight on it because I obviously didn't have a label. And I was like, well, you know, that's a label, not being straight. I used to have some merch that said not straight on it. And Redbubble held it for like 3 days while they investigated it to make sure that it wasn't offensive.
Oh, no.
I think they were scared I was being a bit like super straight or whatever it was.
I think that highlights a big issue that we have, though. A big issue that we have in society in that most auto mods as a default are set to catch words like gay because they're used so often as an insult instead of what they're actually there for, to be like, hey, I'm a man who likes men, or I'm a woman who likes women, or whatever. You know what I mean? Ugh. Also, I was thinking off the back of the point you were making a short while ago about, like, you know, how you're still working out like what your label is, if you need a label, that sort of thing. I'm in a very similar boat, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Like, I don't think there's ever a point in which you need to be 100% confident in who you are how you identify, and also it's forever fluid.
Yeah.
Like sexuality, gender, everything, it's always fluid. So you might one day be like, okay, this is the label that fits me best right now. And then in 5 years' time, off the back of a load of growth, self-realization, everything else, it might be that your label and just completely changed. That your sexuality might not have changed because, well, it might have. But the point I want to make is labels and how we identify are forever changing, just in the same way that we as humans are forever changing.
Mm-hmm. I love that as a sort of look, I think, because I think if you are struggling with your label early on, I think what I found the hardest part is obviously where labels are handy is to search for things. So if you're searching online for stuff, if you know what the label is, then you can read about other people that are like you. But I couldn't find any of that because I was like, I don't know what I am. I don't know what I'm into. What's happening? I've always been quote unquote straight, but clearly that's not fucking true. I had outside forces that were like, that's not for you. You can have friends that are gay, but that's not for you. I was very much my atmosphere. And I think it affected me quite badly for a long time. But as I've sort of gotten older, and again, I've been through counselling for other stuff and all that kind of thing, I've come out at the end of it and gone, because my counsellor was the same. She's like, do you need a label? And I was like, well, probably not, really. Just who you're attracted to is who you're attracted to, I guess. And that's okay. And to be honest, it's lovely to speak to somebody else who isn't entirely confident in what the label is, because, again, you don't necessarily see people online all also saying, well, I don't know what I am, really, but that's fine.
Yeah. I think it's our generation that are the unfortunate ones that are being caught here, because like the generation below us, so Gen Z, huge shout out to Gen Z.
Oh God, yeah.
I will fight for Gen Z. Gen Z, you're incredible.
They're gonna save us all. That's what's gonna happen there. They're incredible.
Stepped in, just being like, right, hold on a second. This whole system, this whole structure, this whole way that you're all living your lives, what are you doing? What are you doing? What is this mess? And we millennials have turned around and been like, crap, they're right.
Sorry, were we allowed to do this all along? Because we weren't sure about that.
We could be individuals? What? This was not in the pamphlet.
We could just exist and not worry about shit. Who knew?
What? And
we're so fucked up from our like forefathers and stuff. I swear to God.
Tell me about it. It's such a problem. It's just been like handed down from generation to generation. Mm-hmm. It's just the way that we live life. This heteronormative way of living life. This is the default, which it's not, by the way. Mm-hmm. Heteronormative is valid, but it's not the default. There's so many other options. And just like you, I'm still pretty lost. I was in the army, assumed I was straight because I was 18 when I fell into the army, and even before that I was very kind of lost and confused in life, and then I kind of joined the army, which is a very heteronormative environment, very masculine, very teaching people to be manly and strong and tough and not show emotions outside of anger. Anger is the only valid emotion.
Anger is the only emotion.
The anger. You see that table? Flip the table.
Be a man.
So, yes. So those 10 years, I'd be like, okay, yeah, I'm a straight guy. This makes sense. I'm a normal human being. Mm-hmm. Look at me contributing to this normal society. I'm so proud of myself. And then leaving it and going to therapy and realizing, oh, I'm not straight.
Yeah.
that topless man over there looks very good topless over there.
I tell you the thing that makes me cry every time, right? And it's the dumbest thing. Frozen 2, right? She sings this song where she's being kept awake at night by this voice that keeps talking to her and keeps calling to her and won't leave her alone. Every time I watch that song, I sob my heart out, because to me, right, I know they're not admitting that she's gay, but she's clearly gay, because that whole song spoke to me on such a level about just being pestered by this thing that felt not quite right and just wouldn't leave you alone. And you were just like, no, it's fine. Ignore it. And it just keeps pecking at you until you go, oh, actually, hang on, maybe I need to have a little think about this.
And then you burst through the door going, ah!
Yeah. Yeah, it's a dumb thing, but it spoke to me for some strange reason.
I like it. It's a good analogy. I'm here for it.
Okay, so you talk a lot about mental health stuff and kind of mindfulness and that kind of thing. So how do you go about that in terms of, are you like teaching your audience? Is that the kind of route you go down?
I try to pull as much as I can from my own experiences. So like what I've learned from my times in therapy, what I've learned from my times in counseling, the books that I've read. Basically it became almost an obsession. That might be a bit strong, but when I discovered mindfulness and when I discovered mental health, it suddenly like pieces started to fall into place. I started realizing that for the vast majority of my life, I've not been living presently. I've been either like existing in a space of being like, okay, I'll be happy when this happens and being all future focused. And then my anxiety will step in and my anxiety is like, hey, do you remember that time like 5 years ago when you embarrassed yourself in front of everyone? Let's relive that over and over again in your head. And I was either living in the past or the present without realizing that I'd said like 6 times, I'll be happy when this happens. And those things had happened. I put plans into place to make those things happen. And then as soon as those things had happened, I would immediately be like, all right, what's the next happy thing? Because I'm not happy right now. And instead of thinking to myself like, okay, let's praise myself for putting those things into play. Let's give myself a pat on the back for overcoming these challenges to allow myself to get to this place that I told myself I'd be happy. Let's let myself be happy here instead of immediately being like, all right, what's the next thing to change?
So you're just always changing the goalposts.
Exactly. Every time you reach the goal, it's like the goal then, when you're in one of those dreams that you're running down the corridor and the corridor just keeps extending.
Yeah.
And you're like, no, come back. I'm running so hard here. It's exactly like that. That was how I was living my life. And there's still a lot of work to do. I do not sit here as like this master guru of mindfulness. I'm still very much on a journey just as much as everyone else is. There's no ceiling when it comes to mental health and mindfulness. I think that can sound quite daunting, I think, when you hear it for the first time. When I first went into therapy, I was not convinced, but optimistic that after the first therapy session, I would be cured.
Oh, no.
Depression. What's depression? Anxiety? Never heard of her. You know what I mean? Like,
I don't know
mental health stuff. Yeah, it would just like, what's the word? Not evolve out of me. Evaporate out of me. That's the one. And then after the first session, it was almost like this crushing back down to earth feeling of realizing like, oh, okay, this is all still here. This is all still there. All I've done is I've cried in front of someone today that I don't know. Okay. How do I move forward from here? And it wasn't until maybe like my 4th or 5th therapy session because I'll level with you. I first went to therapy because I was convinced that would be the correct choice to get an ex-partner back.
Oh,
I was like, all right.
No.
I know.
No.
Learning. I was like, how do I get this person back in my life? I know. I'll go to therapy.
I'll fix me and then they'll want me back. That's how that works.
Yeah, past Rhi had some questionable mantras. So, in about my 4th session, I had this moment of like dawning of being like, okay, there's a lot going on in here. There's a lot of, I'm not in tune with my feelings. I'm not in tune with my subconscious.
Yep.
And I'm letting those two beings dictate how I'm leading my life. And it would switch. Sometimes it would be my feeling. So if I had like a feeling orientated response, that feeling would immediately come to the forefront and would be the thing that led my actions on whatever it is that's playing out in front of me. And generally speaking, I'm quite my feelings are very strong. Like I feel things. Obviously, it's hard to judge because you can never tell how other people are feeling things.
Yeah.
But from speaking to people and from reading things, I get the impression I feel things above the average level of feeling.
Okay.
I couldn't say exactly where. So if, say, for instance, I was presented with a minor inconvenience, like a ticket being put on my car, because consequences from actions. I've not read a sign about where I've parked my car, and a warden's come over and been like, "Gotcha, friend," and written me a ticket. And I would just like fly off the handle, like shouting, screaming, kicking a lamppost. Like my feelings were completely in control of my actions.
Wow.
And then it was after speaking about that in like my 4th session of therapy that I was like, and my therapist was like, "Yeah, do you know you can actually manage these things?" And I was like, "What? What? My conscious brain can make decisions to make things more, I don't know, to make me more of a level-headed person."
Yeah.
For real. And it was since then that I started pouring all of my energy. Actually, don't like how I worded that. I poured the amount of energy that I chose to pour into it, because it wasn't all my energy.
Yeah.
Like I didn't get like completely hung up on it. Into understanding my brain and into understanding how the subconscious works and how there are parts of the subconscious that will still hold teachings from when you were a child that no longer serve you any purpose today. Like the way that your parents saw you when you were a kid, or the way that your parents may have treated you when you were a child, no longer is beneficial to you.
Yeah.
Because for me, like I still got on both my parents fabulously, thankfully. I don't hold either of them to account for their actions when they were younger, because just in the same way as I had to, they had to go through a level of growth as well. They had me when they were, I think, 24 and 20, respectively. I think maybe 28 and 24. Either way. And at that point in my life, I was definitely not as mindful and aware of others as I am now. So who am I to hold my parents to account for not being mindful and aware, especially when they come from a generation which didn't have that kind of availability to them?
Yeah.
So there's still many conversations I have to have with my parents, and I think both of them are aware of it, that it is going to come one day, because they both come to my streams, which is just fabulous.
That's wonderful.
They're huge fans of Rhiebelle, and I'm so happy. But there are conversations that I'm gonna have to have with them both, not from a negative place, but from a place that allows all of us to put things that happened in the past to rest. And I'm kind of excited about it, to be honest with you, as and when we're ready for that to happen. I think it's gonna be important that we have those conversations in person.
It's
so we're gonna have to
such
wait
a
until
familiar story to me, because I think I've had almost an identical experience to you, but I went the other way. So whereas all of your expression was outward and you were getting angry and hitting things, all of my expression went inwards, because I was so obsessed with other people's opinions of me. It was almost like my feelings and my opinions and stuff didn't matter at all. So if something happened, immediately that was my fault. I've done something bad. I need to make it up. So again, I went through therapy and then hit basically like session 5 and did a similar thing when I was like, oh, actually, maybe you should sometimes, A, pay attention to your own feelings and emotions, B, not give a shit about what other people think of you, because you're living your life, you're not living their life. And then exactly the same thing with your parents is the fact that, you know, when I was growing up, I wouldn't say they were outwardly homophobic. So like me and my sister had had gay friends, and they would never be outwardly nasty to them, but there were always comments. So there'd be things like 2 men would wake up in bed on Coronation Street and they hadn't been doing anything. They just woke up together as a couple and had a chat. And you'd have my dad say, "Have we got to watch this before the watershed?" You know, things like that. Just tiny little, like, you know, that death by 1,000 cuts thing, basically, which is tiny little things that got to you. And then since I've come out to them, they've started asking questions. They've started to learn stuff that now and again they'll come over and they'll say, "What's a cis person? What does ace mean?" And I'm just like, I love the fact that they've obviously taken an interest in it, because they know that their daughter isn't a straight person. And they've never had to worry about it before, but now it's become a thing, and they can't do these. Nuka has used the word microaggressions, which I think is right. They know they can't get away with that anymore. So they've gone away and they've read some words, and because I'm the only queer person they know, they're like, right, you can answer all of my questions. But the fact that they're asking questions to me, it's that growth thing again. The fact that they're trying means absolutely everything to me, because they're trying to understand.
That's all we can. Oh, voice. Hello, come back to me.
Hi.
That's all we can ask of people. Like, just be willing to grow. Be willing to further what you think you know
Mhm.
as science, technology, biology, humanity
Words
evolves.
evolve.
Yes.
You know, it's this whole thing about people getting angry about trans people in bathrooms. You feel like saying it's happened for decades. You just didn't have the word for it. So you didn't know. And now all of a sudden we have a particular word. Suddenly you're acting like they've all just been invented. It's like you've got trans people in their like 70s. Get over yourselves.
Goodness. Fact.
It's wild, isn't it?
Oh, I know. Do you know what? I was going to make a point on this side of mental health and mindfulness, and it's completely slipped my mind. Knowing me, it's going to come back in a different topic later on.
It's going to be so poignant.
Let's feel it. You see this pin here? This pin in my fingers?
Yeah.
We're going to put that right there.
Put a pin on it.
Rhi has a point. Rhi has a really good point to make,
Right.
but she's forgotten it.
But you know what? That's okay.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
You know what? That's just a human being thing. I call it streamer brain.
Okay. Yes, it's a thing.
It's a real thing.
I think we're so quick to hold ourselves to a certain standard, a standard of like not making mistakes, not getting it wrong, getting everything right, and expecting perfection from ourselves at all times. I am so bad for that. And it's just not a realistic expectation to have about ourselves. We can't be 100% all the time. We can't be our best selves all the time because there are so many factors. Humans are such a complicated species. I mean, every species is complicated, but humans, especially with this cognitive ability of like self-deprecation without consciously self-deprecating yourself.
Yeah.
Your subconscious just steps in and it just like starts throwing all these words at you, like negative words and phrases about you. And if you don't meet those and don't listen to those and don't acknowledge those with a bit of kindness, but also giving a counterpoint to that subconscious thought, they can completely overcome you, and you can be then like just be in the fetal position on your bedroom floor, as I was numerous times on my journey of growth.
I feel a bit like, do you feel that Twitch has helped with that? Because it's so live and things go wrong all of the time. I've suddenly become more forgiving of stuff going wrong. It's like people will understand. Because at the beginning, I was exactly like that. It's like, it's all got to be perfect. And like I've said to you before that I was streaming off a 2012 iMac. It was an absolute garbage fire for the first 3 months. But ultimately, people still came back and they were still friendly. And it was just because you're there to have a chat to. Do you think being live all the time has helped you accept that things don't always go to plan?
I think it's a double-edged sword.
Yeah.
I think Twitch as a whole is a double-edged sword. So being live all the time and getting used to things not going to plan, yes. I mean, the first time that things go wrong, that like whether it's your first stream or your 5th stream, it's coming.
Anxiety's back.
Coming.
I was terrified it was going to go wrong today. I was just like, oh my God, what do I do if it's all wrong?
I think it's always got potential to go wrong. No matter how experienced you are, no matter how many times you've gone live, there's always an area that can fall over. Like, you click that. There was a time, I think it was maybe about 2 months ago now ish. I clicked go live and I just got this error message pop up saying like failed, error, numbers, and I was like, this is my go live time. Obviously that panic starts to inset. And you start your subconscious starts throwing all those things at you. You know what I mean? People are waiting for you. You're a failure. You're this. You're that. And I think it's important that when these things do happen, to take that moment of breath. The thing has happened. The thing has gone wrong. If you get flustered, angry, let those emotions take control, it's not going to change the fact it's gone wrong. If anything, it's probably going to cloud your ability to think things through logically. So because it's already happened, because this thing has already, thrown everything out the pram, take that moment to just breathe for a second. Try not to get hung up on the fact it's gone wrong. Just look at it and breathe. And then start to put into place, right, how am I going to fix this? What can I do to mitigate anything further going wrong or to correct this issue entirely? For me, when I got that error message pop up, it turns out my graphics card was out of date. So I had to go into the GeForce experience, update my graphics card, and Streamlabs dropped back in immediately. the stream then started like 5 or 10 minutes late. And obviously, when I went onto the stream, I was still feeling a bit flustered. I was still feeling a bit like, oh my goodness, I'm late. This is awful. And I think it entirely boils down to the relationship that you have with your community.
Yeah.
I am so fortunate to have a fabulous collection of humans who come and watch me. A good few of them are in the chat here this evening. And they're just so supportive and so understanding, because I make a point to encourage that about us. I make a point to encourage that, you know, we're only human, as we talked about earlier on in this stream / podcast, that we are only human. Things do go wrong, and allowing ourselves and forgiving ourselves for when it does, and forgiving our subconsciouses as well, forgiving our subconscious for throwing up all those panics, and greeting those negative thoughts with a little bit of kindness. Really does make a big difference in the grand scheme.
I think there's another good example of that, which was date night that you've done on We Claire's channel. Ashley Storrie was the guest on it last week, and like all of her tech broke, and like she was basically in tears. You could tell that she was really upset about it and the fact that nothing was working. So in the end, she just she rang in on a phone and did it that way. And you could tell that the anxiety had really got to her. And I think she was really worried about letting people down. And obviously her inner voice was saying all sorts of things to her. Not a single person in that chat was angry at the tech going wrong. Every single person was saying, look, we're happy to see you. We can see you. You're on the screen. It's not a problem. And there was so much love that was just pouring out for Ashley. I hope that she saw a lot of it to go, do you know what? Nobody cared. The fact that you were here is the thing that was important, and you were there.
I think it's important to note as well, if someone is getting angry because your tech has gone wrong and it's holding up the show, it's more of a reflection of them than it is you.
Yeah.
Like, stuff does go wrong. And if someone is allowing that to affect them so much that they then want to take it out on you, that is a reflection of their lack of self-awareness. And a lack of compassion for other human beings.
Oh, for sure. Definitely. I think there's an empathy thing there that I think you've really hit the nail on the head about. Just the fact that understanding how other people feel can sometimes go a long way.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. You can never 100% understand. You can never, you can never completely understand someone else's journey. But there's a difference between understanding and being aware of it.
Yeah.
And I think that there's a lot of people who think that it's too much work, it's too much effort, and it's not their responsibility to put in work based on other people's experiences. And I totally disagree. I think being part of a society of humans in which we're all like working together towards a common goal. Like we're not in the jungle anymore. We've evolved past the need of survival of the fittest and everything like that. It's important to make decisions and to train your brain train your brain out of the conditioning as a result of evolving out of a jungle, and B, all of the subconscious thoughts that are instilled in us growing up through school and just living life as a child. Living life as a child is hard. I'm aware it's something we've all done. Like no one gets to skip that stage of life. But oh my goodness, does it suck. Children are terrible to one another.
Yeah.
Terrible. And it's important that we analyze those parts of our brains as adults and start to put those areas to bed, because those subconscious thoughts are no longer going to serve us purpose in an adult world.
I just wish the kids that had called me a lesbian in school had been a little more forceful about it, so that I could have maybe gone, oh, maybe that's an option. Maybe,
you know what?
That's an avenue. Kids are assholes.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Like, I go out and absolutely no shame to anyone who does have kids. That is your choice. That is your prerogative.
You're allowed to have them.
I will cheer you on from a safe distance.
I will give them back to you.
I go out and there's a school just down the road from me. And when I'm going out, and countless times when I'm out walking near children, I have this thought process of, this has reinforced my child-free existence so hard. No, thank you.
Why? Do you see them being awful to each other?
Yeah, all the time. All the time. And I think it throws if you have been that kid who was bullied at school, because obviously, like as much as I have been in the army and stuff, I was still a feminine kid, you know?
Yeah.
Like I wore a mini skirt at 17. I was a proper emo kid.
Nice.
You know, like the fringe and the eyeliner. And I had like a set of like black skinny jeans and a red tartan mini skirt. And I would wear that mini skirt like to town and stuff because I really liked it. I loved it. And I'm going to use air quotes here. So if you're listening, you're not going to see air quotes around this next phrase. Women's clothing is so much more flattering than men. I don't know why we gender items of clothing. Like it's literally fabric. You see this top? The only reason this top is women's top is because if you let me describe this for you.
Yeah, if you're listening.
To a podcast. This is a cute little black crop top, and it's got a bit of a diving, I suppose.
Yeah.
What would you
I don't know what you call that neckline, but it's like a kind of scoop, like a scoop neckline.
Yeah. It's like it's a lower neckline than what your typical men's top would wear, and it's cropped. So I've got my midriff on show. We like a bit of midriff.
That's epic.
Men's clothes, again, air quotes. Men's clothes do not allow men to show off their midriffs. I do a lot of work to these abs. I want to show these off, but my gendered clothing will not allow me to. No, I want clothes that are shapely, that allow me to feel confident and feel sexy. There's nothing wrong with men feeling sexy, FYI. There's nothing wrong with men feeling cute, sexy, beautiful.
Yeah.
Just in the same way as there's nothing wrong with women feeling like assertive or I don't know, grubby. Is that a way to put it? Like that, like kind of like mechanic kind of trope, I guess.
Yeah, I see it.
Like, let's not gender these things. Let's just let individuals decide, this is my aesthetic, this is the aesthetic that I want to embody, and this is the aesthetic that I feel most like me in. And there was definitely
I've got a confession for you of talking about gender clothing. I most days wear men's boxer briefs because they're more comfortable.
And the only thing that's gendering, the only thing that's gendering that is the packaging and society telling you like these are men's boxers. In reality, they're a set of boxers that you find comfortable to wear.
Yeah.
Like there's nothing like other than maybe having a little bit of extra space at the front, which you're not going to take up. Like other than that, it's just a piece of fabric that you wear around your sexual organs and your butt. Do you know what I mean? It gives you.
Have you seen the TikTok of the guy who tries on a dress, clearly for some sort of meme, and then he completely loves himself? Like he's like, oh my God, I'm not being funny, but have you seen how cute I am? And he's like, oh my God, she's cute, she's a bitch, she's all of this.
Yeah.
It's the most glorious TikTok I think I've ever seen in my life.
I encourage anyone out there to try drag.
Yeah.
Give drag a go. Whatever your idea of drag is, especially men who haven't explored an area of femininity around yourself. Start to look into that area. There's nothing wrong with that area. Like it's not going to suddenly detract from your masculinity.
Yeah.
Your penis isn't going to start suddenly shrinking. Like I assure you, from firsthand experience, it's fine. It's just it gives you an insight into yourself that you're not going to get otherwise, and it's enlightening.
Completely agree.
It takes a huge, or this is more personal experience now. It took a huge weight off my shoulders. It took a huge, like I was wearing a mask for the majority of my life without realizing it. That I was this manly army soldier person. And in reality, I'm not. I'm actually like I don't even know how to describe me anymore, but I love it. I love whatever it is I've become.
Oh, that's beautiful. Now, I've tried drag as a drag king. I've got to be honest. I think I quite like the faux queens. I think they're beautiful. But in terms of drag king, I look cute as fuck with a beard, man.
Yes, embrace it.
I loved it. I did my beard
it.
and I put a bit of like white in to give it the bit of the age. And I went, you know what? I look cute.
Yes. Like also like men out there again who are thinking to themselves like, oh, makeup's for women, that sort of thing. Again, you can't see my beard if you're listening on a podcast, but you're just going to have to take my word for it. I use makeup in my beard because it makes it more refined. It gives it more of an edge. It makes it pop more. And literally, it's just a black pencil.
Yeah.
It's a black pencil that I pick up whenever I get into drag, and I go around the edges of my beard and I color it all in, and I give it a brush through, and it just makes everything more amplified.
Yeah.
I love it.
And if you can draw a whole new face on. That's what I learned. I had cheekbones that were high as heaven when I was dressing up in drag.
Absolutely. Like, again, podcast people won't be able to see this, but my cheekbones here, these are amplified by makeup. And they're stunning.
And they are stunning. Everybody needs to try makeup, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
At some point.
Absolutely.
Do you think, in terms of allies, what can they do to be better and be a spokesman for the community? Or, do we need allies to step up? Is the question, I guess, as well?
I think allies are very useful in regard to, like, you're already in a space that people who might be walking on the wrong side of the self-awareness and other people awareness line will listen to you. So there's a little bit of what's the word? There's a part of me that worries, like, am I right doing drag? Because, as I said, I'm still working out my sexuality. I'm like, I don't know, 90% sure that I fall into like the bisexual kind of area. But I can't say 100% for sure yet. So there's a part of me that's like, am I taking drag and using it as a cis man? Is this the right thing to be doing?
God, I feel that. I felt that in my bones there.
Do you know that huge imposter syndrome where it's like, I've grown up presenting straight. I've grown up fitting the mold because I don't know if it's because I trained myself to fit the mold or if I was forced to fit the mold. I couldn't tell you. Regardless, coming back to allies, I think that allies are hugely important because they do bridge that gap from people who have outwardly been in the LGBTQIA plus community growing up, and may not have had the ear of their peers or may not have had the ear of society. Allies who can see that LGBTQIA plus person as a human being who deserves just as much time, effort, energy, and rights as everyone else who fits society's mold, who can then turn to that group and say, like, hey, you see this person over here who is a person, who is a human, who may have different beliefs, who may have different values. That doesn't mean that they should be treated any differently. There's a whole area that we could delve into in regard to how crap it is that allies are required to have that conversation. Because society as a whole is so closed off to the community.
You need a go-between.
Yeah, exactly. It's kind of what I use my platform for now, because so I actually had a conversation with someone recently who I was in the army with.
Okay.
And he messaged me, and I share so many things on my private Facebook about around gender and like trans rights and basic human rights, like just treating all humans as you would like to be treated. That's
a
very
wild opinion.
Can you imagine?
You are a maverick.
The radical left.
The radical left, thinking humans deserve rights. What?
How dare I? And he messaged me and he was like, so I see you sharing a lot of this stuff, but I don't get it.
Okay.
I've got a 2-year-old and I want to give this 2-year-old the best possible start in life. Have you got time to have a chat? And we wrote paragraphs to each other about like understanding gender, about giving everyone the opportunity to explore themselves without trying to force them into any boxes, without like telling like young boys that they shouldn't cry because they're boys and all that sort of thing. And it was just such a great conversation with someone who's a little bit older than I am,
Yeah.
who has been in the army again since he was very young. I think he joined at 16, so he's been through that whole conditioning process his whole life, that he's seen me as a way of having this conversation was hugely enlightening. It is, I'd say it's a shame that it took me to have that conversation. Like someone who has been in that straight presenting role, I guess, to make someone aware that, okay, maybe this is something that I should pay attention to. But I think it's important that allies direct people towards LGBTQIA creators.
Okay.
They can bridge that gap of being like, all right, they can make their points heard. They can step forward and be like, right, this is my take on this. This is why I feel that this is why I am an ally, and give their experiences, and then use that to also be like, also, if you want to learn more, here's this great trans person who streams, who outwardly talks about trans rights. It might be worth going and listening to their stream so you can learn more, because they're going to have more experiences and a lived experience to talk from that I can't say myself. And it's all about bridging those connections, not in a sense of like canceling the straight ally. Like this isn't a thing of being like, right, okay, you've done your job now. We no longer need people watching you. Goodbye. It's an as well as.
Yeah.
It's blowing out someone else's candle does not make yours burn brighter. In the same way that like holding a flame up to your already lit candle won't make it burn brighter. You're both still going to shine.
Yeah.
And it's just a matter of empowering everyone upwards, all of the good people, all of the people who want to see others grow, want to see others shine. And yeah, working together with allies, I think is the most important
beautiful
thing.
metaphor. And I think the one I always use is when, especially in regards to trans rights, when people are just being absolute morons about it, is this whole thing about, it's not about replacing people at the table, it's about making a bigger table. So it's not that people are losing seats, we are making a bigger table so everybody can sit down,
I think that's a big thing. I think that there's a lot of fear from people out with the community who think that they're going to be cancelled as a result of allowing more people at the table. And it's not the case. It's not the case at all. The whole LGBTQIA plus movement is about inclusivity and giving everyone a platform and giving everyone an equal share of what is, quite frankly, a bountiful world. Like there's so much opportunity. Let's let
it's not limited,
have...
is it?
No,
it's not a restriction on how much you can have.
Absolutely not. It's not a competition. Like, let's just all live together in peace and harmony. I'm so radical.
Let's all start a commune.
Yes. But on that point, this is actually something I've spoken to my partner about quite a lot. The idea of having a bubble that people say like, oh, you're living in your bubble, as if it's a bad thing. I think that there's nothing wrong with it's surrounding yourself with good people that want to see you succeed.
Yeah.
And I think that coming back to the point I made earlier on around like being cancelled and everything like that, I think that opening your bubble to everyone in the first instance, not having a discriminatory bubble, right? This is an area for good people. Come on in, come and join us. Come and join this cuddle puddle, this party. If you don't want to cuddle, that's fine. Consent's important here.
We're very consent positive over here, I can tell you.
Exactly. But the second that someone then transgresses against those rules, that openness, that inclusivity, and then starts bringing others down or making others feel bad for existing, that's when you can start turning around and be like, okay, well, we gave you the opportunity. We really wanted you to be here. But for the protection of my mental health and everyone else's mental health here, we're now going to exclude you from the bubble. If you then grow, and if you then develop yourself as a human, we may choose to bring you back into the bubble at a later date. But also, I think it's important to remember that. And yeah, okay, I'm going to go into this. Trigger warning, content warning,
okay.
Domestic abuse.
Okay.
I think it's important to remember that as abusers, you are never entitled to that human's time ever again. No matter how much growth you show,
Oh
no matter
God.
how much work you've done to yourself, you are never entitled back into someone's life. And I think the same goes for this bubble that we're talking about here. If you've hurt someone in a space and your choices, your actions, your words have caused someone distress and you've been excluded from that space, it's up to that individual and that collective of people to then invite you back in. It's not your space to walk back in and say, okay, I've changed, I've grown, I've learned, I'm obviously welcome back here, because you might not be.
Yeah.
And that's unfortunately consequences of the choices and actions of where you are now. There are people that I can never speak to again in life as a result
Same.
of being an insecure person as a younger version of me, and that's something I've got to accept. And all that we can do is push forward as a better version of ourselves with an aim of pushing out more positivity in the future and being more aware of ourselves in the future.
I've got to say thank you for saying that, because from my perspective, my ex-husband was abusive. And again, going through counselling, so much of my time was spent going, why can't I be a better person and forgive it and forgive everything that happened? And there is an aspect of me that blames myself for not being able to forgive it. And it's like, I think you sort of come to terms with going, look, that person is a monster. Even if they're an incredible person now, I don't even know that they are. Like, I don't see them. So maybe they've become this incredibly, quote unquote, woke, brilliant human. And there's an aspect of me that will never forgive him. And I feel like that's kind of my prerogative, to never forgive him. Like, I never want that person back in my life. And I feel like it's okay to be all right with that.
Absolutely. Absolutely it is. I think that it's if you are going to forgive him, I think you should forgive him for yourself.
Yeah.
So that you can put that whole situation to bed and be like, okay, that was a time of my life that it was what it was, and it's over now, and it's done. You don't owe him anything. And this goes for everyone here who's been in a similar situation to that. Don't beat yourself up for the way that you feel based on how someone has treated you in the past, because that's on them and not you. And it's not your responsibility to do any cleanup as a result of the situation that you found yourself in.
It's so true. And it's like, I think in terms of the forgiving for myself aspect, that bit's done, because it's like, look, that's what's happened. I'm okay with how I dealt with it and all that kind of stuff. But I think, especially before the counselling aspect, there is an aspect of my brain that was just going, look, if you forgave him, then, you know, you'd be a better person and all of this kind of stuff. And you're just like, do you know what? Fucking...
Sounds like conditioning to me.
It does sound like conditioning.
The idea that the victim has to be the better person.
Yeah.
Like, excuse me, what? The tolerance paradox. It's the tolerance paradox. The idea that if you... Okay, so hold on. Let me word this right. If there's people who will turn around and say that the left is the tolerant left is something that's referenced quite a lot.
Yes, it is.
And the thing is that it's a paradox, because if you allow intolerance, if you are tolerant of intolerance, then that intolerance will completely encompass everything and will run riot, essentially. But again, it's a hard thing to word because it is a paradox. There are so many documents out there. If you're interested in this sort of thing, just do a quick Google of the tolerance paradox.
Okay.
But the idea of people having to meet intolerance with tolerance and being tolerant of intolerance, it's just not a thing, and it shouldn't be a thing. It shouldn't be a thing of like, okay, well, I'm going to be the better person because I'm the more tolerant person, so I'm going to allow you to walk all over me or abuse me or treat me in a certain way because I'm being tolerant. No, absolutely not. We can be tolerant to an extent, and then like the gloves are off. Let's go.
There's a question from Millie about what if that person is a family member. I presume same thing applies, doesn't it?
I would say same thing applies. I think that we're all raised in this idea that like because our let's use parents for example as like direct family,
Mm.
because our parents have given birth to us and raised us and done this, done that, it doesn't excuse them for treating you badly. As I said earlier on, I think that it's important that we allow our parents to grow in the same way that we need to grow to understand things. But that doesn't mean to say that if your parents refuse to grow and if your parents like dig your heels in and they're just like, no, I'm going to continue to be intolerant and I'm going to continue to make you feel bad for being the person that you are always within your right to break off any relationship without guilt.
Yeah.
Because it is your life. It's not your parents' life. They may have given you life, but that's just it. They've given it to you to do with it what you will. And it's not their place to tell you, this is how I expect you to live. This is how I expect you to be. I want you to this idea of like parents giving birth to children so that they can look after them in older age. Or they can What a horrendous reason to have children, by the way.
Yeah.
I've actually had that in the past. Someone's asked me when I've said like I don't want kids, and they've said like, well, who's going to look after when you're older? And it's like, well, why is that a reason to have a child?
That feels like a big ask.
This is your go-to. This is your defense here. Like, next. But in all seriousness, please, you are an individual and you need to be able to put on your own oxygen mask first. If that plane is going down, it's not your responsibility to put your parents' mask on or to bring your parents up to date. It's their responsibility to recognize that the world has changed, that we've learned more about humanity than we may have done when they were in school. And if they are not willing to adapt even slightly to, I don't know, like get your pronouns correct, or if you've changed your name to get your name right, it's more of a reflection on them than it is of you. And if that's making you feel bad, please, as much as it's a hard thing to do, please don't think I'm downplaying this action by any stretch. It's in your best interests in the long run to break off that relationship, or at least have a break from that relationship and then reassess it after a set period of time. I was going to say an agreed period of time. I don't think it needs to be an agreed period of time. It's up to you how long you need or how long you want to have that break for.
Wow, Rhi. I knew you were going to be insightful today, and I think you've just knocked me for six a little bit.
Oh, thank you.
So I want to start wrapping up then, because your time is much more valuable than mine, as we know.
Absolutely not. Everyone's time is equal. Like that. Okay, hold on.
I did that thing then, didn't I? I absolutely did the thing.
That thing. Like self-deprecating humor is one thing, but the things that you say, your brain absorbs whether or not you're joking.
Yes.
Whether you're joking or not. Your brain hears that thing of being like, okay, this person's time is more valuable than mine, and your brain makes a note of that. Our time is equally valuable. You and I are on a level pegging.
Yeah.
Everyone listening to this, we are all humans who stand on a level pegging, I don't know, bridge.
I'm better at it than I used to be, but I 100% still do it, so I'm fully aware. Got to knock it on the end.
It's all practice. And just the reason that I wanted to bring it up is because making your conscious becoming aware of the thing that you just did is how we reprogram those subconscious thoughts.
I 100% agree.
How we start to empower ourselves.
It's also what my counsellor said.
Yes.
So do you want to tell me who your slay of the day is, please? Because I am trying to learn about new queer icons, maybe people I haven't heard about, maybe people I have. So who is your slay of the day? Okay,
I've actually got two.
Oh, okay.
Oh.
Go for it.
Okay, actually, I've got more than two. But, okay, hold on.
If you've got 10, it's fine. Go for it.
I'm going to go... I'll state my famous one first.
Okay.
My LGBTQI plus icon is David Bowie.
Okay, fair.
An icon. Like, so he, back in the 70s and the 80s, when he was getting interviewed by MTV, was saying to the interviewer, like, why is your entire playlist during daylight hours, why is it all white artists? Why do we not see any artists of color on your show? And this interviewer was so uncomfortable immediately and tried to genuinely refute this point of being like, we play what our listeners want us to play, or what we think our listeners want us to play. And David Bowie's just like, are you for real? Like, how diverse do you think your listeners are? Like,
it's all white people.
Honestly, such a good interview. And if you haven't seen it, I strongly just look it up. David Bowie interview, MTV. I think it's the late 70s, I want to say. So my introduction to David Bowie was in Labyrinth, playing Jareth the Goblin King. And I think that was probably one of my earliest thoughts of being like, oh, so he clearly has a penis because there's a bulge in those very tight leggings. But I'm also not, I'm feeling a thing that I haven't necessarily felt about a penis owner before. I've been told it's bad to feel about penis owners. What does this mean? What does this mean? And I just think he's an icon.
Nuka says the interview was 1983. So if people want to Google it.
Thank you very much for clarifying that. Hugely appreciate it. The non-famous, and I say non-famous, they are a content creator. There is a streamer who goes by Babbling Goat. He is a trans man who talks so much about LGBTQIA rights. He does lectures in universities. He's taken those lectures from the universities to YouTube and Twitch, and he's just an absolute icon. He's young. He's only 23, but he's so, and this is what I mean about like Gen Z. They're just so forward thinking and open-minded, and I learned so much from speaking to Babbling Goat. I've actually nominated him for a little award. I can't remember the exact award ceremony, but I saw it pop up on Twitter, and they're looking for LGBTQIA icons who might not be discovered yet in the community type thing. And I've nominated him for this award because I just think the stuff he does is incredible.
Is he
he's
quite
actually
young?
The person. Yeah, 23 years old.
Wow. Okay. I mean
they're
going to save us all, aren't they?
Oh, for sure. I can't wait until Gen Z are in positions of power.
Yeah,
are like in Parliament, in the Senate, whatever it is that your country is political minded. I can't wait for more Gen Z in those positions. But he's actually the person who introduced me to Rage Club, which is one of my stream teams. He connected me with Rage Club, and it's a very LGBTQIA plus inclusive, and I think we're probably predominant in the team. And so that they're also my slays. Rage Club and Stream Queens, my two stream teams.
I am 100% looking them up the second that we finish this.
Yeah.
So where can people find you on the internet or beyond?
So I am on Twitch 4 days a week. Tuesdays, we play a variety game. Last night, we're in the middle of Life is Strange 2 at the minute. Fridays, we play Final Fantasy 7. Saturdays, Final Fantasy 14. And Sundays is mental health and mindfulness orientated life chats. I'm also on Instagram, YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, all the socials. I'm a model as well as a streamer. So if you're interested in like modeling content, both alternative boy self and my drag self, I'm all over the place. Just search for Rhiebelle and you'll find me.
And you'll find, and all the details will be in the podcasty stuff anyway. Is there anything else you want to promote before we end? Anything coming up? Anything exciting?
Oh no! Why didn't I prepare this before? What's going on in my life?
No is an acceptable answer. I'm giving you the opportunity.
I'm just concerned that there might be someone listening who's sitting there like, yes, this is the opportunity.
Yes, we're writing a book together. What's wrong with you?
Actually, as it happens, it has been discussed.
Okay, all right.
It has been discussed. Very, very, very early stages. If I want to sound really impressive, I can say that a published author has approached me with an idea of wanting to write a book about mental health, mindfulness, and mind management, and make it a bit of a biography about my life growing up as well. It's slightly less impressive when that published author is my mum.
Okay.
But it's still cool.
But that's all right. That sounds like it's more likely to happen.
Yeah, I would agree. It's so great. You know what? Like my mum, I have so much admiration for my mum. So I'm going to be speaking to a specialist in the next few weeks about potentially being bipolar. My mum is diagnosed bipolar, and that's what's kind of like set me off down this path. My moods are all over the place and have been only getting not worse through lockdown, but harder to manage, I would have said.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like spurred me on to start looking into that. My mum is hugely inspirational because she is been known and diagnosed to have bipolar for most of her life and has lived through a time in which mental health was hugely stigmatized. And she got a book published. It's called In Fortune's Footsteps. It's a romantic novel. I don't read romantic novels, so I haven't read it. I know, terrible of me. But the only books I read are like mind management books. Anyway,
get the audiobook if you find.
Yeah, that's an idea. She's just such an inspiration that she's overcome all of that controversy and got herself published as someone who has had to face bipolar stigmatization through her life and the challenges that come alongside that. So huge shout out to my mum.
Hey, huge shout out to Rhi's mum because that's incredible. Yeah. You have to do like a manual one, like a verbal shout out.
If you're interested in the book, it's her name is Lisa McSweeney, and the book is called In Fortune's Footsteps. I think it's quite cheap now. She was published a few years ago, so you can probably pick up on Amazon quite cheap nowadays.
Dee Dee has done shout out Rhi's mum.
Yeah, thank you, Dee Dee. Thank you.
She tried. Amazing. Okay, so thank you so much for coming today because it was so insightful and like I learned a load of stuff anyway, and I've got my own homework to do. So I'm going to get on Stream Queens. I'm going to get on Dragula. Yeah. And the tolerance paradox, which I also think will be interesting.
Yeah, it's been hugely insightful for me. And as I said, I don't think there's ever a ceiling when we're learning these things. There's always more things to learn.
Can always grow, can always learn stuff. And
100%.
It's the kind of attitude I'm completely down with, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So thank you so much for joining me. And I will see you again very, very soon.
My pleasure. Thank you for
Rhiebelle.
having me here.
Thank you for coming.
Bye for now.
Bye for now.
Mwah.
So that was the incredible megastar Rhiebelle. She streams really regularly over on twitch.tv/Rhiebelle. Please go check her out. I think she's doing so much good for the LGBT plus community and mental health in general. She's just really, really insightful and got me to think about a lot of things. An absolute pleasure to talk to. Hope you enjoyed that one. In the meantime, I'm hanging out over on twitch.tv/JedigadeMaster. I'll see you next week. Bye.